All right, guys. So this panel is called "The Future of Cinema." It's based on a conversation that all of us were involved in on Facebook the other day. That was pretty intriguing, but the idea of it is uh, movie theaters have been kind of on a decline for years, and then Corona Apocalypse hit. And on top of that, a little movie called Trolls 2 came out for kids. And this movie that really just should have been a shot in the dark and forgotten.
Should have been
Um,
shot.
yeah,
$100
changed the
million.
entire
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
$100 million. So I'm Jason Gilbert, author and film critic. Bill, why don't you go ahead, go next?
I'm Bill Mulligan, filmmaker, man about town.
And Mike.
My name is Michael Ray Williams. I'm primarily an actor, but I've also been a writer and director and an all-around movie buff.
Dave.
I'm Dave Harlequin. I'm the creative director of a Stranger Concept Films, indie filmmaker, as well as a professional screenwriter, journalist, and just person that's trying to learn Zoom.
We all
Aren't we all?
Okay, so just kind of the anecdotal question first. What is the first, and everybody's been asked this 1,000 times, what is the first film you can remember seeing at the movie theater?
Oh.
Huh.
You
That's
just
a good
showed up,
question.
you can smell popcorn.
Been a while.
You're excited.
I believe, yeah. It was at a drive-in, because you could take the whole family there, and I'm pretty sure it was a Disney movie. I remember seeing The Computer That Wore Tennis Shoes, but I feel like it was earlier than that. And I'd seen movies before then on TV. Black Scorpion, the first one I remember. But the first movie that they took us to go see at a drive-in was one of those god-awful Disney live-action movies back when Disney live-action movies were fairly god-awful. The Adventures of Bullwhip Griffin, perfect example.
Oh my God. All right, Mike.
The first really mine are kind of mixed, but the first one I think that I have them like that pops up when I think about the question is Batman Returns.
Ooh.
1992. So I was like 5 or 6. I don't know exactly what time of the year that came out, but I remember. I mean, I loved Batman, the Michael Keaton. The first one, my grandparents had it on VHS, and they used to put it on for me a lot. I had a Batman, that movie TV tray. My dad took me to see the movie. I was wearing a Batman shirt, a Batman hat, and Batman Velcro sneakers. And it was at the Waverly Place movie theater, which years and years later got turned into a Gold's Gym. And now it's a Cine Bistro. So it went from a movie theater to a gym back to a movie theater of sorts.
Interesting.
But yeah.
Wow.
Batman Returns. That's the first one I can think of. And then like the one, it's really tied really closely with Jurassic Park, which I think was 93, if I'm remembering correctly.
Those are great intros to cinema. Wow.
Right? No wonder I'm obsessed.
Mm-hmm.
Dave.
Honestly, I think I know I went to the movies to see something else, but the first movie I remember like paying my own money like to go see with my friends was The Crow.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Wow.
Nice.
The first movie I can remember seeing my dad took me to was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
To this day.
You know what? I that was one of my first too.
Yeah.
To this day.
Teenage
Probably my
Mutant
favorite
Ninja
comic book
Turtles.
movie.
Yes. Absolutely.
Do you have any idea? Do you guys have any idea how painful it is to be hearing, my childhood back in 1992 when I was 32 freaking years old? I should have just said, oh, yeah, I think it was the Great Train Robbery. Oh, how he screamed when he pointed the gun at the camera.
Bill, I thought you just did these panels with us just to make yourself feel old.
He doesn't
that-
have to work hard at that.
It's where it's working.
It was Metropolis, wasn't it, Bill? Over at
Yeah.
the picture
Metropolis.
show?
Yeah, it was the long version too, which
The moving
has now
picture
been lost.
show.
Yeah, and there was a coming attraction for London After Midnight. Didn't go.
So back,
In joke for
Bummer.
so movie theaters really got started with the Nickelodeon, and then moving on to silent film. I mean, that's how you watched movies. It wasn't really until the late 70s before we started having the ability to watch feature films at home.
Yeah.
You have the Betamax versus VHS war, which VHS won, it was won by the porn industry. Go figure how that one got decided. But hey,
Whatever
course,
works.
right?
Yeah.
Well, and then we went from VHS to DVD, and then we had Blu-ray versus HD DVD, and Disney really decided that one. Because here we are with Blu-ray. So, at what point do you think, or do you feel like the decline in movie theaters really started to show? Let's start with you, Dave.
I really don't know. I remember the movie theater that I went to when I was a kid, when I was in high school, when I started high school, about 1997. I remember the movie theater that my friends and I loved to go to just one day just went out of business and shut down. And, it sucked. We hated it. But right about that time, like, this big multiplex opened up in town, and we just all started going there. So I don't know, maybe it was then.
Okay.
Like
Mike?
the downfall of the old indie theaters.
Yeah. All right, Mike, what you got?
I mean, it's funny because mine is sort of proceeded very similarly. That theater that I mentioned that was at Waverly Place in Cary closed down sometime in the late 90s, early 2000s. I don't know exactly when, but I know it closed down somewhere in that gap. And I mean, I don't necessarily think that was probably, I think from that point on is when it started to go into effect, because all of these giant theaters started popping up everywhere. These, I remember one opened in Morrisville that was like 30 cinemas or some craziness. And for me, like, looking back at that, like, as an adult, like, that's such a financial burden to open a facility that big that would have to require a staff to man it, and the equipment to come in, sound and the projection equipment. I think that when they started making movie theaters giant, that was when they shot themselves in the foot.
Okay. Bill, what you got?
I would agree. I would agree with that because they made the movie theaters giant, but they made the screens very small. There'd be one or two for the big blockbuster, and then some of the theaters eventually got to the point where they're not much better than what a lot of people have as their home theater right now. I think ultimately what killed the theaters is TV got better. The TVs themselves got better to the point where the TV is about the size of what the screen is if you're sitting in the far seats. You don't have all the horrible distractions. Yeah, your TV is and you don't have anyone around you that you don't want to have around you, and it's a better experience. And frankly, I'm discovering that I'll go to a movie theater and see a movie where I'm looking at it's like, this is too damn dark. And I know it wasn't shot this way because the ads on my TV look better. They no longer actually have a projectionist because they're no longer projecting, and the quality of the film going experience is gone. And of course, the drive-ins, which is where I started, are gone. They just vanished. And boy, do I wish they were back now because we could still go to the movies. Yeah. Wouldn't it be great to be able to go to a drive-in?
The giant, exponential, amazingly capitalism unchecked cost of concessions is the big factor as well.
I have some behind.
I know
have
that's
some
the bulk of
insider
theater's
info on
revenue.
Yeah.
I just can't wrap my head. I mean, I worked in the friggin' food industry. Like, I know what food costs when you're buying it wholesale. Like, there's just no friggin' way. So I understand that's the bulk of their profits. That's where they come from. But
Yeah.
good night, man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to
When-
spend $12 on a bag of popcorn.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
I'm
the
not gonna
thing
do it.
too, is because the theater itself, for the first period of the contract, which is typically the first 2 weeks, they only get a very small percentage of the box office sales. And really, depending on the studio, for the first little bit, they might not get any of it.
Yeah, that's true.
So they had to make it up. That's why your concessions are so expensive.
Yeah.
That's why you have employees making it minimum wage. Everybody
Oh, yeah.
working there is making minimum wage, including your projectionist. Your management, when I was managing a movie theater, Park Terrace in Charlotte, I was making $8 an hour as a manager.
God, I miss Paris.
Yeah. So for me, it seems like I thought when they opened the AMC 22, because I grew up here in Rock Hill, we had the Carmike Cinema 7.
Yeah, the
And
one
that's
that
where
I
you
used to
went.
go to was Carmike.
Yeah. And
Dave,
that's
what are
what we
you
had.
doing?
And
Huh?
then they opened the AMC 22. And it's like, oh my God, they can have that. You had these huge seats, stadium seating, big screens, huge sound systems, whole 9 yards. But it was still like $6, $7. And then we show up one day and they want double that. And they want $12
Yeah.
a ticket. And for me, I think that's when I started to notice the decline, is it seemed like it was becoming more and more and more expensive to come to the theater. And
It's not a sustainable.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
a sustainable business model, because this whole
Well, no,
thing where they're not making any money for the first 2 weeks, but the way the audience is now, the first 2 weeks is when everybody goes to the movie.
yep.
It's a rare movie that lasts
most
very.
part,
I mean, I
yeah.
remember when Jaws came out. Jaws played all summer at one theater. That was
Mhm.
your choice, Jaws, and it was, everybody saw it because it was really the only choice in town. Now everything is front loaded. The movies come out and they make a blistering amount of money in a short period of time, but that's it. And if it doesn't make a lot of money, the studio abandons them.
So do you feel like that maybe part of the issue with movie theaters being on the decline, I mean, it's easy to default and say, oh, well, the advent of home video and as much as it costs to go. Do you think maybe part of that decline, that what's contributing to it, is the amount of money they're putting into the production of these films these days? I mean, some of the actors, and I mean, actors need to get paid. Actors need to get paid.
Sure.
But Chris Hemsworth made almost $20 million for Avengers Endgame. That's not including all the other movies. That's that one film of their $300 million budget. He had $20 million of it locked down. So do you think that maybe that's a contributing factor, and what would make you think that? Starting with you, Bill.
It's a factor. I mean, movies are way too expensive. I can't begrudge Avengers, which we knew was going to make $2 billion, so he's worth whatever you pay him to get that kind of thing going. But as an overall thing, no, it's not sustainable. And quite frankly, if you take superheroes out of the mix, and it's hard to remember, but it wasn't that long ago that superhero movies were considered a real risky gamble. You take the superhero movies out of the mix, and I'm not sure there is a theater business, because they are the straw that's stirring all the drinks. Nobody's making The Godfather. Nobody's making Goodfellas. Nobody's making these dramas. There's low budget that almost has to make a profit because it's so low. And there's big blockbuster, which so far the franchises have delivered. But audiences are fickle. And superhero movies could go the way of the Western. And it could happen really fast while you still have a bunch of movies in the pipeline. They're like, oh, people stop going to superhero movies, and we've got about $1 billion worth that are still waiting to be released. It could be a real catastrophe.
Yeah. Mike?
I'm gonna say something kind of ugly, especially because of the line of work that I have put myself in. Like I am an actor. I
Yeah.
want to make movies. I want to make a living making movies and doing theater. Um, Culturally speaking, we pay our actors, musicians, and athletes way too much. Uh, especially if you look at now. This is a big topic that is for a whole nother panel about the ethics of entertainment. But when you look at the gamut of professions, what we pay teachers, what we pay doctors, what we pay manual labor workers who keep the friggin' country rolling, versus one of the things. So speaking of comic book movies, Iron Man. When I learned that Terrence Howard was he was one of the highest paid actors in that movie,
Yeah.
and the reason he didn't come back is because he wanted more money. As Bill has said, I'm going to echo, it's not a sustainable model. But how do you circumvent that when you look at the way they create these licenses and these franchises? You've got a small army, a small country's worth of people working on the movie. They all gotta get paid. They all gotta eat. You have merchandising rights. You have residuals. You have all this distribution stuff. Like these products make money for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you figure out the math about like what's fair for everybody to get? And then theaters. I feel for theaters because they don't they're showing the movie, but they're not really contributing to the movie. So what should the studios be doing to help? Should the studios be doing anything at all to help theaters? I mean, it's one of the reasons that I bowed out of the conversation on Facebook, because it's such a big, complicated issue.
Right. Dave.
I honestly, I'm sorry. That these guys pretty much nailed it. I mean, I completely agree. I mean, that's about all I got to contribute.
So
we're professionals.
Yeah. Well, and just to throw this out there before I go to my next question.
Know what they're talking about.
So back in 1980, Friday the 13th had a $500,000 budget, and it made $10 million theatrical
return. Yeah.
Now we had The Lone Ranger by Disney, arguably a shit movie. Had The Lone Ranger by Disney, they cost them $300 million, and it bombed. It didn't even make, I don't even think it made, if you look at a gross adjusted dollars, probably didn't make $5 million. If you
might have done a little better than that, but it was a disaster.
If you had adjusted the dollars for 1980s time, probably about 5-6 million. Now I think it made like 26 million. But now we get to an age where it seems like the studios. So in the 30s through, we'll say, the late 70s, it was very obvious that the studios needed the theater industry, and even some of the 80s. And they would shoot these films catering to the theater. What is this going to look like in the theater? What kind of audience is this going to draw? Is this going to be a blockbuster in the theater, or is it going to flop? But now it seems like the studios are acting like they don't need the theaters anymore. And on the same token, given what's going on right now with Universal, which I'll cover in my next question, it almost seems like the movie theaters don't quite need the studios anymore. And it's very obvious that one needs the other, but they just don't seem to realize it. So what changed? When and where did that dynamic change? We'll start with you, Dave.
That dynamic changed with the rise of the internet, to be honest with you. The internet made the accessibility of films so wide open, streaming services, before that, downloads, all of the above. I mean, hell, home video in general is dying. Like DVDs, Blu-rays, that's dying, and that stuff that you can buy and take home and watch whenever you want to. Movie theaters are having to sell the experience now. Like, it's the experience of going to see a film. That's all they have. And that in a really, really big screen. But as was pointed out earlier, sometimes that's at home too.
Mm-hmm.
So like, why would I, if I'm just a consumer, why would I want to go pay $12, $14 for a movie ticket? That's, what, $24, $28 for a movie date to go see a film, when I could just, get it streaming at home for considerably cheaper.
Right. How about you, Mike?
I mean, to kind of piggyback off that with the internet, I mean, once, I don't remember if it was Netflix or if it was Hulu, which one of them did the original thing first. And I want to say it was actually Hulu, because I remember getting into an argument about originals. Whenever the streaming services started making their own content, that's when theaters were really in trouble, because like we said earlier, they were already limping. They shot themselves in the foot years prior. But then you have these streaming services that are, you can get for pennies a day, that are putting out original content, quality original content. How do you compete? Like Dave said, the theaters are selling an experience, but some of them are half-assing that experience because they aren't investing in the best projections. They aren't investing in the best sound. They aren't keeping the theaters as clean. I remember I was astounded. We went to see, I think it was Infinity War. I don't think it was Endgame. To the theater that we go to now whenever we want to go see a movie in theater, and the theater was disgusting. It was filthy. Like I had not stepped on a sticky theater floor that bad since going to like the Mission Valley Cinema for a horror movie film festival. Like theater, some of them now this isn't the case everywhere. Some theaters really, really, hit the ground running and put their effort and their all into making the theater experience worth it. Red Cinema in Greensboro was awesome. I love that place. We'll go back to that later because there's something else that I want to address in this whole thing. But when you have the accessibility of good content readily available at home, and you have a whole culture of just phoning it in at the theaters, then that's a perfect storm for people to just, say to hell with it and stay home.
Yeah. All right, Bill, what you got?
I agree with what Mike said. I mean, once you go to the Alamo Draft House, you don't really want to ever go back to your local theater. You just can't do that as often as you used to do because it's a bit of a trip and it's expensive, but it's actually worth it. I think HBO was probably the one that first started doing original programming, and they've continued to do original.
But they didn't have a streaming platform right away.
No, but it's arguable to say that they were the first ones on mainstream television.
Right, right.
No, I don't think about that because I never had. HBO,
the only difference is the only difference is you had to, initially with HBO, if they were showing whatever they were showing, you had to watch. Oh, Beastmaster, yay! So that's the, but now you can choose to see, which is really when everything changed, when you can choose what you want. Netflix has 1 million movies, and you can pick any one of them to watch. Right. And a lot of it is also movies have always been able to evolve because they could do things that other platforms couldn't. When TV started robbing their audience, they did 3D. They did Cinerama, and then they started doing the next one, which was start doing topics and things that were forbidden before. So you can't see naked people on TV, but you can sure see them at the movies. Well, now you can see naked people, more naked people, and you can shake a stick at on TV. TV now, I think the streamings they're covering topics the movies wouldn't do.
Yeah, that's true.
And so the real intelligent writing is not on the screen like it used to be. It used to be writing for television was what you did to earn your street cred so you could eventually write movies. Now, no, you want to be writing a Game of Thrones. That's your ticket to
Yeah.
fame and fortune.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
you want
Word.
something serialized.
Yeah.
So the theater industry over the years, it seems to me, has been unsuccessfully trying to get with the times. So when we had DVD and even the advent of digital presentation and Blu-ray, you only had a few theaters, and they were your super high-end theaters that went to a full digital presentation and got away
Mhm.
from film. But even to this day, so many theaters are still using 35 millimeter film. Well, then here comes Universal, and here comes the pandemic, and now we're all stuck at home and having to do this through Zoom, and we can't go to the movie theater, and the novelty is now gone. You go to the movie theater to see a movie. There's no allure to it anymore because the living room's right there. And my sound system is disgustingly awesome. My TV for the room is huge. There's no reason for me to pay $100 for the three of us to go.
Same thing. Yeah.
Then this little family movie called Trolls 2, the sequel to the original Trolls movie, comes out. No one should care about this movie unless you have young children.
Right.
Universal decides we're going to do a streaming release. And in the first weekend, just streaming, they made $100 million. And suddenly you've got AMC saying they're not going to carry Universal Films anymore because Universal is saying, oh God, there's a cash cow here. So do you think that Universal, that AMC is making a smart business decision there by saying we're not going to carry any more Universal films, or do you think that that for them, business-wise, is a hill worth dying on? Start with you, Bill.
I think it's an empty threat. I don't think anyone expects they're going to stick to it. I'm not sure the theaters are the ones that are really holding the cards at this point. When this, God willing, is over and people can go back, are they going? I mean, as things begin to open, they're not going to just open up the doors and say, "Hey, everyone, pack inside there and sit right next to each other." They're going to have, and will people go? I mean, so much depends on things we all don't know. As we're filming this, we're in the middle of the pandemic. It may spike. This may be something we are going to be living with for years, and in that case, things like theaters are just not coming back. So they can make all the threats. When we come back, we're going to do this and this. It's like, you don't know if you're coming back. It's interesting. Trolls look god awful. I haven't read a single good review, but when you're dying of thirst, anything's a good drink. And I guess people were just looking for something new. So it happened to be Trolls. I mean, that was a great business move. This movie would have stiffed at the box office were there a box office. I'm sure the movies, like, what was that one, Bloodshot? I'm sure they are kicking themselves in the pants that they did not just wait a couple of weeks until everything shut down and then released it like they did with Trolls, because it happened to come out the theater when everyone's afraid to go to the theater, and just really bad timing. I'll be interested to see what happens with things like Mulan and the James Bond movie, which if they keep pushing them back, there'll be more people with pirated copies than could ever possibly go to the.
Yeah. How about you, Mike? What you got?
I think that both of the statements that were made by the CEO at AMC and the CEO at Universal, I think were super premature. I can't really fault Universal, and this was kind of a crux of the debate that we got into on Facebook. I can't really fault Universal because they are adapting. They are adapting to the new climate that we are living in. The climate, as Bill has pointed out, we will probably be in for a while. There's a shelf life on film. There's a shelf life on these new film products. You can't shoot a movie and then shut it up and be like, okay, well, we're just going to not show it to anybody until we're allowed to release it however we want. Like it's just that's not how the industry works. If you do that, that is going to be worse for the industry down the road than coming off. Now the CEO at Universal, I think his statements were premature. They shouldn't have said, this is how we're going to do it from now on, because that's just painting a target on your back. And I think the knee-jerk reaction from the CEO at AMC, which, my heart goes out to anybody in those positions, because the theater, the idea that the movie theater is not going to come back for this is scary. And there are some people who that's been their whole lives. That is all that is what they do. And that's scary. We're all in really uncharted territories, and all of us have anxieties and trauma response, and it causes, and again, these are new anxieties and new trauma responses. Mm-hmm. So we can't really gauge what's an appropriate reaction and what isn't. But I definitely think that it was foolish for AMC to respond the way they did. I think it was super premature for Universal to make such a statement. We're all going to have to adapt. Literally every single facet of our socio-cultural life is going to have to adapt and reconfigure. Contracts are going to have to be redrawn. We're going to have to figure out how to live in this, this new world order after all is said and done. Because like Bill said, it's going to be a while before we're able to go to a theater again. Mm-hmm. It's gonna be a while before we're allowed, before it's safe for us to congregate like that. I hope that the theater industry is able to recover. It seems strange to me that none of them have tried to buy into the streaming market, which maybe they have, and I'm just ignorant of it. But yeah, man.
All right, Dave.
Make no mistake about it. What AMC did was 100% out of desperation. And I mean, really, who could blame them? Because, truth be told, Universal just proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that they can do this without them. They cashed in on the pandemic, and, good for them. But what happened here is it used to be the one thing that theaters had kind of the one up on is movie theaters was just where you went to see the brand new movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Except because what are they going to do? Like release them at home for a stupid amount of money? Well, they did, and it worked. And Universal knew that. And they're like, this is profitable. We're going to keep doing this. AMC's like, oh, crap. They can do this, and it works. So what this is this is a panic move. It's a panic move because they know that Universal's right here. They don't need the movie theaters anymore because people clearly will pay it. Will they after this whole pandemic's over? Who knows? That's the real where I agree with what was said earlier about we don't know yet. It is premature. It is. But this was a knee-jerk desperation reaction here, because again, like new movies, you go to the theater to see the new movies first.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens when that's not always the case anymore? What happens when there's other options available? Do as many people go out and spend money at the box office, or even let's say the pandemic's over, right? And everything's back to normal, except this. So, I don't know, whatever, the new James Bond movie comes out, and all these people are going to the box office, going to the movie theater to see it. But it's also available at home. So how many of those people are not going to go to the movies to see it and are instead going to pay to go see it at home? That's going to hurt only one entity, and that's going to hurt the movie theaters.
At the end of the day, it's important to remember that the movie studios are making a product. They are making something to sell to make money. Now, their goals, I'm sure, are to entertain as well, but they are selling a product. The theater is just the middleman. They're just a form of distribution. You know, the audience wants that product, whether they want it coming from the theater or coming from, you know, their own home is really up to them. And as we move forward in time and adapt and recover from this pandemic situation, we'll see how that evolves.
And if they want to see that movie,
Disney,
they're money regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah. Disney seems to be in a real bad position. I mean, they just released a statement today. They lost about $2 billion or something. It sounds crazy. And yet, to me, they're in the driver's seat. Disney Plus, could there possibly have been a better bit of timing to launch Disney Plus? I'll tell you the movie that should terrify AMC and everyone, Black Widow. Because I'm convinced if they released Black Widow on Disney Plus and they say $20,
Not
and you
even.
can $20 and you can watch it. You can be the first person to watch it on the first day it's released. I'll spring for that because that's the $20 is my wife and I going to the movie theater and buying
100%.
You know,
honestly though, I think that they would charge less because Universal I think only charged like $5.99 to watch Trolls. And
there's Trolls,
right? That's Trolls. Think about $5.99 to watch Black Widow, and how much more they would make. That was the argument I made, Mike, and I'm glad you brought that up on the Facebook argument that we were involved with another individual. The point that I made was, so you have a fixed audience that is going. You can estimate pretty well. Is going to go pay $20 a head to possibly go see your movie, whether it's Avengers Endgame or Birdman. Okay. Well, you have a streaming platform that's $5.99 for the movies theater. You've had to pay distribution costs on having film printed, having discs printed, trailers, advertising, Mylar posters. For the streaming, you had to upload it to a server.
That's it.
So
and you're probably advertising on your own streaming service.
Right.
Disney's advertising is not having to pay money to advertise in movie theaters and in print and everything else. They're advertising on their own service. It's costing them nothing. You make $100 million movies, you got to spend another $100 million to market it.
Yeah.
You're taking a lot of that off the table. That's now suddenly profit.
Well, and easily you conservatively quadruple the size of your initial audience with a stream for $6, because I can spend money on a steak dinner for my family and watch this movie at home for half the cost of just walking in the door at a movie theater.
For 100%.
So, and like one of y'all had said earlier, Dave, I think it was you went to the movies to see the new movie. And there was novelty in it, and the novelty is gone. My argument would be we need to bring the novelty back. So my question is, the question in this is that, is the movie theater industry salvageable, and what do you think that they would need to do to make any semblance of a comeback? And Dave, I'll start with you.
Is it salvageable? If they keep the premiere at home stuff, no. The big movie theaters, the big corporate owned theaters, they're going to be all right. They'll figure out a way. We're about to witness the death of independent theaters over this, because the exclusivity is gone. If movie theaters are not the only place you can go to see brand new movies, then, as you pointed out earlier, Jason, then why am I paying all that money for it? Why wouldn't I just stay home?
Yeah. All right.
The only way I can think to salvage it is take models like a lot of the like Cinnabar, like Alamo Draft House and stuff. You know, maybe turn it into a restaurant bar, get more of the party atmosphere going there, or film festivals, or show more independent films. Like, stop focusing so hardcore on the brand new release first run movies. But is that profitable? I don't know.
All right, Mike.
I think that I do. I mean, again, it could be just naivete. It could be just blind optimism. I like to think, yes, it is salvageable, but not without pretty extraneous adaptation. I think that one thing that they could do. So I recall in the early to mid 2000s, that's when big malls started to go on the decline.
Yeah.
And one thing that malls, at least around North Carolina, that I noticed started doing, they started hosting events more, like Comic-Cons.
Yeah.
Like these festivals. Theaters, at least all of the theaters that I can think of that I go to. Now, I know this is not the case for all of them, and some of them, unfortunately, are probably going to close their doors. But some of them, freaking Crossroads 20, which is giant, they could easily have an event in there and bring comic artists and people making crafts and do like a little vendor room, and they could do a food truck rodeo in the parking lot. You do these big event release things for big movies that are coming out. Treat every weekend or every other weekend in a month like it's a grand opening. Invite different groups in, invite different people in to come in and make it an event, make it something that the family can go and spend a couple of hours at, as opposed to just going and seeing one movie and then leaving. I'll tack on to what one of the things Dave said. More theaters should be cultivating relationships with independent filmmakers. This is and one of the things that's going to be a hard fought battle with is that Netflix has done that. Mm-hmm. Netflix has already done it. Yeah. Netflix wants independent filmmakers. Amazon Prime, it is so easy to make a movie and get it on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be a good movie. Netflix, I think, is a little bit more discerning, but
Trust
Amazon
me.
Prime, they don't care. Amazon Prime will just be like, "Yep, you made a movie? Awesome. Let's do it."
Yeah. You are not wrong.
But these theaters, like Red Cinema in Greensboro, is great because they host several film festivals throughout the year, and bring it in and really make it a cool event. There are other theaters that do that sort of thing. I think that if they were that minded about it, and that coupled with making these events, I feel like they could sort of retool themselves, tailor themselves in a different way. They're going to have to adapt somehow, though. Like that, I'll say it again. Everything's going to be different going forward.
Yeah,
we have hit a paradigm shift in our culture as a species, and everything is going to change going forward. I'm a theatrical performer at heart. I love the theater. It's probably going to be a year and a half before theatrical performances with audiences will be safe.
Yeah.
Will be permitted.
Yeah.
And that is a heartbreaking thing, but I also understand that, just because the motion of the ocean is changing doesn't mean I can't learn to swim differently.
Right.
Go ahead.
One thing real quick, if I can, to piggyback up what Michael was saying there. Another thing, like with these movie theaters that they do with the big events and everything, Airsley Grand Cinemas in Charlotte, where I live, in addition to hosting many film festivals, they also do these entire months worth of retro cinema. Like every Friday night, they're showing like special double features of retro. So they're cashing in on the too.
The Carolina Theater in Durham does that, and it is amazingly well attended. Like I have gone and seen some films there that I would have bet money would not have been packed houses, that not an empty seat in the room.
Yeah.
And theaters, it doesn't always have to be first run stuff. You can cultivate and make your own film festivals. You can
Now it just sells.
Yeah, it does. I relish that. Like I got to take my wife and my brother-in-law and his girlfriend to see the 4K restoration of 2001.
Oh,
Wow.
God.
None of them had seen it, and it was this awesome event, and the place was packed. I almost dropped an F-bomb there. The place was
PG-13,
packed.
you get up to 3.
Wow.
Okay. Oh,
In
I get
film.
3? I
Wait.
get 3?
Don't bump her that
Robert
joint.
Altman set that
That's
standard.
true. So and like I said, the place was packed. Another time we went, we saw a double feature of the remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers and a remake of The Blob.
Oh, yeah.
And I talked to this guy at the concession stand who had brought his 13-year-old kid, and he was just all giddy about being able to show his 13-year-old son these movies. Like theaters, every theater could do that. If they tried, every theater could do that. It requires the people managing and running the place to think about it a little differently and to put a little bit more effort, not just assume, okay, we're going to get these movies, sent to us at this time in the month. And then that's what we're doing for the month. And then we'll just rinse and repeat next month,
Yeah.
A little showmanship would be nice.
Some people don't want to change. And I think that is reflective in the statement from AMC's CEO.
Mhm.
That statement to me sounds like I don't want to change. The reason that I got so up in arms about it is because he used the phrase, they didn't want to give us a seat at the table.
Wow.
You didn't make the movie, man.
Yeah.
You didn't make the movie. You had nothing to do with making the movie.
Right.
You should be, I get, yes, the studios should be doing more to help theaters to an extent. But the studio's the one that's invested and made them, and spent the time and the money and the effort. Why should you get a seat at the table? You got to adapt. You got to figure out how to get your seat at the table.
Yeah, your
Making
table
some
has germs.
off-the-cuff remark. Yeah,
Let me get
have any of the theater companies started streaming services?
No, absolutely not.
Nope.
Regal.
I don't think they have enough money to even
AMC.
start something like that. And what would they do? When the studios start service, the studios actually produce the product. What do the theaters do? This would be like having the mule say he's going to set up a drug. He's going to be a drug kingpin. He doesn't get the drugs. He just delivers them to the customer.
Yeah.
I'm going to say my piece. I'm very pessimistic. I think.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, because there's when change comes, and sometimes when things get better, people go back to the way it is. There's a viable alternative to the theaters, and it may be preferable. And once people get used to not going to them, there's not a whole lot of reason to go back. And I just want to say that would break my heart because there's something you can't get even from the best TV. When I think of maybe the two best theatrical experiences I ever had, two movies that could not be more different: Avengers Endgame and The Blair Witch Project.
Oh,
because
yeah.
I saw both of them. I saw both of them opening night. Blair Witch, I saw something I've never seen before since. At the end and in the last few moments of that movie, people were rising out of their chairs in terror.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and even though I knew this was all BS, some of these people actually believe this was real. It took me away. I felt it too because I was being dragged with this communal fear that was marvelous. And Avengers Endgame was the closest thing to a movie version of the Super Bowl. Like I had the best seats in the house and my team was winning. And everyone, you know the scenes, each individual shot, Thor's hammer rising. We freaked out. And watching that by myself, it's still a fun movie and I still love it, but there'll be nothing like being with that crowd, not knowing what was going to happen. We all deliberately kept ourselves in the dark. We didn't want any spoilers. When characters left us, we teared up. I saw grown men crying. I was looking in the mirror. It was me. It was wonderful. It was such a roller coaster ride. And yet you think, how often can you do that? It took them 20 movies and 10 years to set up this magnificent event. That can't be replicated often, if ever again. I feel jealous for the people who I see these things on YouTube where it's watching Game of Thrones in a bar with everybody reacting to what's happening, and all they're doing is showing like the people watching something happen said, yeah, that's how I should have watched Game of Thrones. I should have gone to the bar down the street, the local microbrewery, and watched it with a bunch of people.
So I think ultimately we could all say that we're in agreement that if movie theaters want any chance of survival, the number one thing they need to do is bring back the novelty
Yeah.
of going to the theater, whether you're showing the newest blockbuster or you're showing, this weekend only, one night only, the original theatrical print of Ghostbusters. Bring back the
Which I've
drive-in,
seen.
which is a novelty. So yeah, I 100% agree. So guys, we're out of time.
Right now.
Say
Right
what now?
Oh yeah.
That would be perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So guys, we're out of time. I want to thank you guys for your time on this and all your input and being patient with the tech.
This was an experiment that others will benefit from.
Everybody,
Yes.
This is a virtue.
including
And
us.
if you are watching this on YouTube, hit like and subscribe and ring the bell so that you know when we are putting up another panel. And we also have live stuff that we're going to be doing. So, guys,
it's
thank
gonna be
you
a
all
good
for
time.
joining Con Carolinas. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.